The world's gone crazy. Iran's firing rockets. The Strait of Hormuz is closed. But what does it all mean? I've had lots of clients reaching out to me asking, what is going on, Sam?
What's clear here, from what we're hearing from both sides, each side is escalating their own rhetoric.
So in today's video, we're going to have a look at what's going on, what I'm focusing on, and how that's going to affect the markets moving forward. What a time to be alive. My name is Sam from Liberty Bullion. We're an Australian bullion dealer. We buy and sell gold, silver and platinum to the Australian public. So what's going on? Well, first of all, let me just preface everything that comes next with I am in Australia, in Melbourne right now, watching what's going on unfold on mainstream media. It may mean that I get a few things wrong as I'm basing it off what I'm seeing, but I'm doing the best I can with what I've got. So let's get into it. Now, with everything going on, there's two components to consider here. The first of which is specifically related to the Strait of Hormuz, to the commodities that flow through it. The second is war. The importance of the strait cannot be stressed enough. Over 20% of global oil and natural gas production flows through the strait, which is why we've seen the price of oil absolutely skyrocket in the last month or so.
At the heart of the crisis is a narrow waterway that Iran is holding hostage. About a quarter of the world's oil comes from countries that border the Persian Gulf and shipped to global markets on tankers, which of course have to pass through the strait.
Now, this closure of the strait applies to more than just oil and gas. It applies to a number of different commodities and it gets quite complicated. So we've got somebody who's gone deep down the rabbit hole on this to explain in further detail for you.
Everyone's been talking about the shutdown affecting oil and natural gas, as that's what that region of the world's known for. But there's also a lot of other minerals that have been shut down by that closure as well that people don't talk about in the news, because the other two byproducts that have come from refining all this oil affect sulfur production and affect fertilizer production in the world. 45% of the world's fertilizer raw ingredients come from Gulf countries that travel through the Strait of Hormuz. 40% of the world's urea, which is a main ingredient in fertilizer, comes through the strait. Then 20% of the world's nitrogen-based ingredients for fertilizer. And then 45% of the world's sulfur comes through the strait. And without that sulfur, you can't make sulfuric acid used to extract minerals from the ore. If you've watched any videos on YouTube of people refining metal at home, sulfuric acid is what you need to do that. And without that, you can't refine metal, you can't build anything without the metals. Significant issue. And the media's just not talking about this at the moment, just oil. And they're releasing all these oils from the strategic reserves around the world, but they don't have reserves of fertilizer, of sulfuric acid, because they just never foresaw that side of it.
All of it sounds incredibly inflationary, whether it be the initial effects of oil. I mean, oil being the most important commodity in the world, used in everything. So as the price of oil goes up, the price of transportation goes up, essentially the price of all goods go up. I mean, anything that's created with plastic uses oil in its creation. I mean, these are the three key driving points of modern civilization, is energy, food and metals. With all three of those facing problems here, that creates a huge opportunity for investors.
And when we live in a just-in-time economy in the West, they don't have reserves for any of this. The energy minister came out a week or so ago and was saying that we've got, I think, 30 days of fuel left.
We currently have 36 days of petrol supply on hand, 29 days of jet fuel and 32 days of diesel.
Because most of our fuel came from Asia and China and Thailand. I think a few other countries have shut down all exports of oil and gas. So we're just getting that all from the US at the moment. They've emergency last-ditch effort to try and get some supply in. But if America needs to start reserving some for themselves, tough out of luck. We got no other option.
Are there any alternative pipelines or methods of transport a way other than the Strait of Hormuz?
There's a few pipelines that have built up over the years, because back in the 70s when we had the exact same stuff happening, the oil embargoes and all that rocketed the price up, quadrupled it in the course of a year or so. So they built a few pipelines, but they can only deal with a few million barrels, and we're losing 20 million barrels per day from this strait being closed, and that's compounding every single day, 20 days in now. Their only other option is to drive these barrels across Saudi Arabia in the desert, which isn't good for saving fuel.
No, and it has its limitations in how many trucks you can use, how many drivers you've got, and we're talking massive quantities of oil. These countries are based on oil.
Yeah, like there was 100+ ships every single day going through the strait, and these are massive tankers filled with oil. The Iranian regimes allowed, I think, 1 or 2 ships some days going through. Their own ships, apparently, they've been letting through, and then also China, they've been super friendly with allowing some Chinese ships to go through, but everyone else, you try to run it, get blown apart.
They are saying clearly that only ships related to the United States and Israel and their allies aren't allowed to pass there. The Iranians want to experience this leverage they have in order to create a new status quo. Several Iranian officials, including the foreign minister, saying that post-war reality should be Iran should have its leverage still.
Oh, well, just the math of the issue here of 20 million barrels per day missing is a huge amount, and 20 days deep, that's 400 million barrels missing if the war ends today.
And that's before you start talking about the damage to the oil infrastructure that's been done, whether it be refineries that have been blown up, whether it be production facilities that have been blown up. The global level of production capacity for oil has been significantly reduced.
Another element to consider is that even the wells that weren't destroyed or damaged by these attacks from either side, also it's damaging to just close them down to begin with when there's no capacity. Turning these things back on is rare that they get back to their full capacity of what they can produce, and it takes weeks to do it if they are capable of doing it. So there's no easy fix to this. These problems do not disappear anytime soon.
Now let's move on to war. Now, war is inflationary. War means government spending, paying soldiers' salaries, buying their clothes and boots and guns, paying for rockets, missiles, artillery, planes, helicopters, fighter jets, bombs. All of this costs money. And it's money that either needs to be taken from the taxpayer, which is politically unpopular, or printed out of thin air. And that's what governments choose to do, and that is why war is inflationary. Let's start at the 1970s, or a little bit before that, the Vietnam War of the 60s. Now, the reason that Richard Nixon had to take the US off the gold standard was because the US had printed too many dollars with not enough gold in the vaults to back it. Why did they do that? Why did they print too many dollars? Because they had to fund the Vietnam War. So the entire reason that the US had to come off the gold standard was because of war, and more importantly, war spending. Now let's have a look at what happened to gold in the 70s. Well, it went from $35 an ounce in 1971 and it hit $850 an ounce in 1980, 9 years later. Now, silver went even crazier. Silver outperformed gold percentage-wise, going from just over $1 an ounce US in 1971 and hitting $50 an ounce US in 1980. Now, let's look at another war, a more recent one, the War on Terror. So you can look back to 2001, 9/11, 2001, and the ensuing war on terror in the Middle East, whether it be Iraq, Afghanistan, etc., etc. Trillions and trillions of dollars was spent on the global war on terror, and all of that has been reflected in the gold price, where in 2001 the price of gold was a couple $100 an ounce US, and by 2011 the price of gold had hit almost $2,000 per ounce. Now, to quickly think about the military expenditure on this war with Iran, every time that a Patriot missile gets launched, that costs the US over $1 million. And if you look at some of the data that's coming out at the moment, they're talking about this war costing the US more than $1 billion a day. Now, to guys like you and me, that's a lot of money. To Uncle Sam, maybe not so much, but the point being is that those funds have to come from somewhere, either from the taxpayer or the money printer. And it's absolutely not coming from the taxpayer because of the political unpopularity of taxing the taxpayer. People don't like paying taxes, and particularly for war. Now, another thing to consider is that in war, governments typically shift from being confident in accepting each other's fiat currency or bonds and shift towards demanding payment in gold. You can see that in a modern context with countries like China moving away from the US dollar as the world's reserve currency, their central bank shifting from US Treasury holdings to holding more gold. And looking back further through history, there's a more direct comparison where you look at, say, World War II with the British and the Americans, where the British were paying the Americans for weapons. They didn't pay them in British pounds or in British government bonds, they paid them in gold. Physical gold they had to ship across the Atlantic and give to the Americans. Why did the Americans make the British go through the hassle of getting all this gold halfway across the world? It was because they wanted a method of payment that they could trust, that would hold its value. So in conclusion, there's two main reasons why this war will push the prices of precious metals to the upside. The first of which is the Strait of Hormuz and the shortage it's creating in global commodities, not just oil and gas, others as well. And also, secondly, that war by its very nature is inflationary. It involves massive government spending, therefore massive currency creation, all of which pushes gold and silver to the upside. So if you're keen to invest in gold, silver and platinum, I do know a guy. He's called Sam from Liberty Bullion. Feel free to reach out to us. You can either pop an order through the website, give us a call, send us an email, or come into the store, whatever suits you best, and we'd be more than happy to answer any questions you may have as well. What a time to be alive.